Back to focus on health law. This is a popular and long-standing segment on the Capitol Forum. The presenter here is attorney Kenneth Haber from Boyd's, Maryland. Today, this internationally renowned attorney, Kenneth Haber, will be questioned by attorney Ramesh Khurana. Mr. Ramesh Khurana is the chief attorney and counselor at immigration law at the Khurana Law Firm, located in Gaithersburg, Maryland. The hot topic of discussion between these two attorneys is based on the illegal kickbacks and illegal remunerations. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the Capitol Forum. I have a great pleasure to have Kenneth Haber, who is a very renowned and distinguished attorney in the Maryland State. When I say Maryland State, he is having his office in Boyd's in Maryland, and I have my office in Gaithersburg. So, Ken is a healthcare attorney, and he takes care of physician needs and any other healthcare issues, because he is the former assistant U.S. attorney and the former senior attorney in the Office of Inspector General, Department of Health and Human Sources, right?
Services. Yes,
Services. So, Ken, welcome to our studios.
Thank you.
It's always a great pleasure having you in our studio to ask you some questions.
My pleasure.
Which are very beneficial for the physician community.
It's my pleasure to answer them, my pleasure to serve the physicians. As you know, we have clients across the country because of the fact that so much of it is federal,
Right.
and often we sue the federal government right here in Washington.
Right. And you have been practicing healthcare law for the last more than 3 decades.
I think closer to 4.
4 decades. Wow. Yeah, that's wonderful. Great achievement. So, nobody knows better than you do about illegal kickbacks and illegal remunerations, because you worked in the Office of Inspector General of U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Yes, and
you were the assistant U.S. attorney.
Yeah, even then we had healthcare cases. I had an antitrust case against healthcare providers in the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's why we have invited you to answer these
thank you.
questions. Okay. So, my first question for today to you is, Ken, what are illegal kickbacks and remuneration, and what makes them illegal? Can you please explain?
Yes, anytime a healthcare provider pays anything or provides incentives to a third party in order to get a patient, say the patient's the second party, to get a patient come to them, that's unless it is within the defined limits of the regulations and statutes, then that's an illegal kickback remuneration.
Can you give some examples?
Yes, I can. Once upon a time, there was, let me give one example. There's so many situations that come through one's mind.
In 4 decades, you know.
But
just give one example.
One example. Yeah, well, I got mine built right now. No,
let us say you are making a reference to the sleep centers.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So
let's talk about this.
Let's talk about that. Let's say that some doctor is making referrals to sleep centers, you know, and he's receiving some sort of percentage of the payments that the sleep center is getting for treating those patients. That would be an outright kickback, illegal remuneration. But the thing is that people try to cover them up and try to make it so that it doesn't look so blatant. So what they might do is they might have a spouse who has a business. And then that sleep center then pays money to the spouse, maybe for supplies, for equipment. And that, unless it is properly defined by the regulations, which normally it would not be, would be an illegal kickback, because the spouse is considered the same as the original first party under the statutes and regulations when we're talking about illegal kickbacks. You can't just give it to the spouse or the child.
So the coverage is quite broad.
Oh, yes, it is.
Right?
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to give an example.
Yeah,
you know?
well, my mind was melting down at the moment. So thanks for the suggestion on that. But
Yeah, I remember because we handled one case together, you know, yeah, about this situation, right? No,
I'll take your word for it. I don't know.
So that's nice. So Ken, please explain in a little bit more details, like what are kickbacks and remunerations, which would amount to in the illegal arena. Let's put it this way.
Let's assume that somebody comes around pushing equipment, trying to say that if you use this equipment, that it'll be absolutely okay. And they're saying that you're going to be able to get all sorts of patients if you use this equipment. Well, that might be okay, except when they start supplying the patients. And at times, this actually does happen, where because the people want to get payment, and the payment could be at a what's called a per-click basis, that they're making payments on that equipment. So for every patient that comes in, they get a payment. And this is illegal. So I mean, like the mere fact, especially when they're making arrangements to send the patients, so they can't send the patients to you.
Right.
But there's a big temptation for people to do that sort of thing and get part of the action.
Okay. Now, Ken, tell us, what can you do if you find yourself innocently involved in a scheme which basically involves illegal kickbacks and remuneration? How you can extract yourself of this messy situation?
Well, as soon as you realize what's going on, what you have to do is get yourself a good health care attorney. And depending upon the specifics, you may want to file a key tam, which is a False Claims Act case where you're the relator. Or you may want to just outright report it to the government. Sometimes it's a matter of feel from an experienced attorney. This is too hot to do it as a key tam. You just want to report it, and the person happens to know people in the IG's office, and the person happens to be able to call them up and say, hey, we got a situation here. My client realized that there was a problem. He wasn't sure what it is, and they contacted me, and once he told me what was happening, I knew exactly what was wrong, and these are the circumstances, and this is the situation. And because you're coming in to them and reporting it before they knew anything, your client is going to be more likely viewed as a cooperating witness instead of as a potential defendant.
Okay. Now, when we are talking about these schemes, can you give us a kind of modus operandi, like how do these schemes operate in the market? And when do you have a good sense of it?
Well, lots of times it really does take an experienced healthcare attorney who has experience in fraud, because they want to dress them up so that they don't appear to be illegal schemes. They don't want them to appear to look evil, because people generally don't want to associate with that type of thing. So they make it look pretty, like that they're just paying for equipment, they're leasing equipment, and there's nothing wrong with leasing equipment, paying for equipment, as long as it's done on a proper basis, and that the remuneration is properly set forth in contracts, and that it's not a basis for referrals. People will sometimes, and it's not just equipment, people will sometimes lease a supply cabinet. This is what healthcare professionals, where if they want to get patients from nursing homes, they might lease a supply cabinet and pay the nursing home. This is actual type of thing that would do. I want to keep my supplies there, so I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month for this supply cabinet so that I can put my stuff there, and then if patients need me, I'm here. That would be an illegal illegal referral situation because the nursing home is now, maybe they made you the medical director because you got the lease on the supply cabinet.
Right.
And on top of that, the patients get to know you, and the nursing home is actually sending you, this patient needs to see a doctor. Oh, well, I'll be around, see all the patients, on such and such date, and they go make their rounds, and you as the doctor is paying for the supply cabinet, so you can keep your supplies,
Yeah.
and it might sound silly, but this is actually what transpires, and there is legitimate leasing of supplies or equipment or room or space, but it's all defined in the regulations as to what is legal and what's illegal, and you need an attorney who knows those regulations to be able to write up the contract so it complies, and an honest physician wants to make sure that his relationships are in compliance with them, because otherwise they can lose everything that they worked for a lifetime. And it might seem really, really good, while they're getting the money, and they might think that, oh, it's all legitimate because, I need this supply cabinet, I'm keeping my supplies there, but, when somebody comes knocking on their door, and there's a number of people who can knock on their door now, from other presentations we've had here, we've talked about some of the government contractors that knock on the door, the ZPICs, Zone Integrity, Zone Integrity Protection Contractor, ZPIC, whatever it stands for.
Yeah, we talked about these concepts in detail.
They do audits, and they will send people out to investigate, and if it looks like it's something that's prohibited, they'll make a referral to the Inspector General's office, my old office, and they will take a look at it and see, and if it looks like needs more investigation but appropriate for investigation, they'll put the time in. And then if it still looks good, then they'll make a referral to the Department of Justice, for prosecution. So, and these people, these contractors are out there, and that's their business, to get money back from people when it's been paid out and the claims have not been properly filled out, or where they have illegal relationships. And, the doctors have to be aware of that, and they have to be aware that their relationships and how it's defined in writing, and it's got to be in writing, because if there's relationships where money's going back and forth, that's the worst thing if it's not in writing.
The trail is there.
Yeah,
Trail
the
of
trail
money is there.
Follow the money. That's what we would always say. Follow the money. And it's just a matter that doctors have to do it right, because there's so much scrutiny going on now that, and so many levels of scrutiny, and so many places where there's scrutiny. Not only are there the ZPICs, but there's the Medicare administrative contractors. They're the ones who make the payouts. Now, if they see something that doesn't look right, they make a referral to the ZPIC. The ZPIC then takes a look at it and see whether or not it looks right or not, and if it doesn't look right, that's when they will put in a little more time and then make the referral to the Inspector General.
Right.
And the ZPICs themselves do audits, and then you got RACs, of course, the recovery audit contractors, and they just go around trying to gobble up all the doctors' monies anyways, just from doing the audits. So, it's really a dog-eat-dog world out there now, as far as the poor healthcare provider, unless he stays on top of what he can and can't do.
Okay. I think we are just left with a little bit over 1 minute. Of course, you have given us a flavor of how these schemes look like. Can you please explain a little bit in more details, like how these schemes would appear to an outside observer? If you can give one example.
An outside observer who's not sophisticated in this area will think, oh, there's a legitimate business relationship, and think, well, the doctor, he's renting a supply cabinet, and,
I know.
so he can put his supplies in it, and that sounds legitimate.
And what's the big deal about
What's
it?
the
right?
big deal about it? Except that these patients are very vulnerable, and these patients are not in a very good position to make decisions as to what services they need and what services they don't need. They're by definition they're in a nursing home and they're vulnerable,
Right.
and that's very bad. That they're going to be taken advantage of, and not only that they're going to be taken advantage of, that the government's going to be taken advantage of. And sometimes, in order to avoid the patients complaining, people will waive the copay, and they think, "Oh, I'm being charitable. I'm waiving the copay." No, you don't want somebody complaining about you. So it's all connected up.
Wonderful. Now, time is over, Ken, but I really appreciate answering all my questions so beautifully. I'm pretty sure our audience is greatly benefited. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.